We're looking at the future of public service broadcasting in the Isle of Man. With me is Ron Berry from 3FM, who's been giving some of his thoughts today. And you said reluctantly you were coming back here because 4 years ago you went through the whole process then, and there seems to be a feeling between other broadcasters that not a lot came out of that. Are you hopeful this time it's going to be different?
I don't think there'll be any change at all. I'm still as cynical as I was before. I think it's a bit of a waste of time, really.
But you spared the time, and you dropped a few things into that conversation today, which you said you didn't even want to go at. So Manx Radio and how much money they can charge for the advertising because they've got the subvention. You must be pretty aggrieved then that it's not a level playing field?
It isn't a level playing field. I mean, one has to understand what this particular select committee is set up for, and the remit is quite clear that the government have reaffirmed their position with regard to funding public service broadcasting. What they want to look at is how it's delivered. So the discussion is not really about how Manx Radio is funded or run as a business, but how much money they receive in terms of public service broadcasting subvention, and is that fit for purpose, and is it spent wisely?
I mean, the last time round you had your own idea of how to bring all the stations together. It didn't seem to gather any sort of going in the process. In fact, I thought you were disheartened at the end of the whole thing.
I was very disheartened. I mean, the initial document that was a discussion document, was meant as a discussion document, and was put together, as I clearly said, on the back of a conversation I had with Anthony Pugh from Manx Radio. And all seemed to be going in the right direction. We were thinking on the same lines. It was economies of scale. It was a question of working together, etc. And then it went before the select committee. And to be perfectly honest, it got pulled to pieces in not such a good way. Now, that was without any discussion. And that was the sort of bit that aggrieved me, because that's not what it was for. It was like saying, hey, here's an idea, let's kick it around and see if there's any merit in it. Okay,
well that was then, and this is now, so what do you think is going to come out of this? I mean, Manx Radio is a constant, it does get kicked, doesn't it, constantly. You think right or wrongly?
You've got to ask yourself why it gets kicked. Is it fit for purpose? It certainly delivers a product, but is it delivering the right product, and is it fit for purpose in today's age, in the way that our population consume their entertainment and information? Or is it over-egged, and should the government be funding a loss-making business?
Well, this all came about, I think, once they switched on their cameras in the studio and went into the television side. What's your feeling of that? Because I know you, obviously I'm doing it, but you do TV stuff now again as well. Do you think that's an area they should be in?
No, not at all. If they're not using public money to do that, then that's a different thing. If they can make it commercially viable to do it, then fine. But they're not using commercial money to it. They're using public money to actually provide that service. It's very clear that's what they're doing.
And they're running TV, one of their promotions saying they're hitting 49% of the audience of the Isle of Man, those sorts of, the sudden sort of campaign going out. Do you agree that they still have a market?
Well, yes, of course they have a market, and as I said in the committee in my evidence, if you look at the RAJAR figures, and RAJAR, rightly or wrongly, whether you believe it or not, is the only measurement that we have in terms of radio, and we're part of it, shows very clearly that in our target market, we are up there in the high sort of 70s, 80% of the marketplace. And that's the opposite to Manx Radio. When you get into the 65 plus, 55 plus, etc., they're in the high 70s, 80s. So it's the other way around. So they have an audience, they have a market, it just happens to be slightly older.
And the future isn't even probably in FM or even AM or anything, because the future everyone's talking about now is going to 5G or something, isn't it?
It's all going to be IP based, but that's going to be quite a long time. The technology to do it will be there. Consumer habits obviously change with an ageing population. So you've still got old people like me who can remember Manx Radio starting. My mother, along with George Ridgway, was the first advertiser on Manx Radio.
Okay, to finish with, if you had complete control over how the future would be operating public service-wise, briefly, how do you see the landscape in Mr. Berry's vision of the future?
Despite what you've heard today, I don't think that the BBC are going to give any more than they actually give to the Isle of Man now. And quite simply, it's down to population size. Outside of the Isle of Man, and we view ourselves as a nation, outside of the Isle of Man, we're 80-odd thousand people. That's what we are.
Yeah, but Jersey and Guernsey do have a BBC operation.
Jersey and Guernsey are a lot more people there, and they've had a public service or a BBC control for a long time.
But there are two different crown dependencies, aren't they? I mean, Jersey and Guernsey.
Yeah, but they've got the higher populations between the two of them.
Well, Guernsey's about the same as ours, and Jersey, I'll take.
But
I'm sorry, the point was, this is.
But you've got to go back historically way back into 1935, when the Isle of Man government adopted the Wireless Telegraphy Act. You know, it's not the fault of the BBC. It's what the Manx government have actually dictated with regard to the broadcasting structure on the island. But I don't think the BBC are going to put any more money into it. You've got to understand, there's a figure of 5 million quoted. That's what they receive from the licence fee. We get BBC 1, BBC 2, BBC 3, BBC 4, Radio 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., which all delivers programming that is entertaining and informative to all ends of the population. Maybe not just the Isle of Man in particularly, but across Britain.
Well, I asked you in the future, I was trying to get really, I suppose, do you see Manx Radio in its current form evolving, or are you wanting to clip its wings? What would you say?
I think Manx Radio has had its day, if I'm being honest. I think it has. And perhaps, you know, the older end of the population, you know, there's still a great loyalty to Manx Radio, but it's a small pocket of the population. But the loyalty's there, because if you then said shut Manx Radio down, then you would have an awful lot of pushback for that. What I think needs to happen is public service broadcasting. What is it? How much are you prepared to pay for it? Put it out to tender to other broadcasters. If you say we want to deliver a video format, then put that out to tender. Subvent it to what you're happy with. Make sure you can support it through commercials, through commercial ventures, and make sure it operates properly.
I'm going to ask you, like, to start this, basically, do you see anything coming out of this?
No.